you ready? The time has come. Let the show begin.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Boom, we're live.
All right,
Tony,
let's do it.
how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Good. Whereabouts in the country are you?
I am on St. Pete Beach today.
Ooh, how's the weather there?
Fantastic. High 70s, all sun.
What's it like at home, which is Cleveland, right?
Yeah, it hasn't. I've been getting some nasty text messages, from the team that it's been, 50 shades of gray and, 40 degrees and that kind of thing. So,
Yeah, it's well, as you may or may not know, I'm in Maryland, and we just have become infamous for one day it's 80, next day it's 30 and snow. I don't get it. So hopefully we'll just have a complete break soon enough. But hey, real quick, for anybody that doesn't know Tony, I can talk about how awesome you are, but if you can, just give everybody a background, bring us up to speed, who you are, obviously probably tailored towards this industry, but anything you want to share is fine too.
yeah, so I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and I went down to the Ohio State University. And while I was down there, I got a part-time job. It was supposed to be for beer money and nothing else. And I actually fell in love with the home improvement industry. I got a job knocking on doors around job sites. I loved the pace of it. I loved that you could set an appointment in the same day. It could get issued to a rep, and then that could go out and become a sale and turn into revenue. And it was like crack cocaine for me. I mean, I loved it. Absolutely loved the pace of it. We still do it in my business today, and nothing gets me more excited than how you can just turn water into wine like that in our business. But since that time, I went up to Cleveland back home after I worked for a long spell in Columbus for a great company down there, learning how to generate leads, learning how to sell in the home, learning oversight of those positions. I ended up starting my own home remodeling business back in 1997. And after 6 or 7 years of doing that, I actually fell flat on my face, filed personal bankruptcy, and filed business bankruptcy, and really had to reevaluate myself, my character, my personal development. I had the talent to get it done and to build a business up pretty quickly, but I did not have the character to sustain it. Talent got me in the room, but I didn't have what it took to get me a seat at the table. And so I actually went to work around the country helping other people with the one thing I was actually good at, which was helping people with lead generation programs, mostly door-to-door canvassing, event marketing, retail stores, and call center activities, and kind of learned what people with great character were doing well and right, and watched some people who didn't have the best character, stumble and fall, and just put those puzzle pieces together, and went back up and started my own business, in 2016, January 2016, really getting things prepared in 2015 and launched 2016. And now I've got Window Expo and Bath Expo up in Cleveland. We'll do well over 10 million this year. Just pacing for a nice month, well over $1 million this month in that business, and then I help people with getting those initiatives going with Tony Hoty Training and Consulting. I host a couple of events. One is a mastermind group in January, and then we have a large lead gen expo in June, and we have a full team of trainers to help people with lead gen and lead conversion.
That's pretty. The thing I love about it, I didn't know that for lack of a better term, it ultimately failed your first shot. I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Crashed and burned miserably.
Well, I think that's one thing I like about you. You don't hide from anything. You know what I mean? Not afraid to be, which sometimes you don't see that. I don't know, that humility sometimes in our space. But the and I want to remind me about Lead Gen Expo, because I'm looking forward to that as well. I want to dive in on that before we end. But I want to get your take on something. I
Yeah.
didn't say anything to you about this before. So historically, you get to go around the country, maybe also in your own business. What's the average cost per an issued lead these days?
Oh, I think it's over $400, across the board. It's most companies, I think it's, you know, 500 plus, in some of the companies, depending upon their mix. A lot of times people ask you pointed questions and you want to give a simple answer, but it's not always that easy because, the issue is that, you know, every company generates leads a different way. Some of them have a heavy media mix and some of them have, different types of grassroots initiatives, repeat referral. It's real easy to keep your costs down when there's just repeat referral and yard sign. You start getting into those big media buys and things like that, and it can get real expensive.
Okay, so let's use the average of 500, and then we'll say hypothetically that I don't know, every same thing. Every business is different. 32 budgeted 32 leads per rep per month issued. Let's just obviously some reps get more, some get less, vice versa. That's $16,000 at 500 for an investment per rep.
Big number, yeah.
Right, big number. And 500, like you just mentioned, depending on what the sources are, is generous. We know a lot of big players that are heavy in the media. That number is probably tipping up towards 1,000 in some cases.
Oh yeah,
But
absolutely, no question.
I like the 500 number. It's realistic. No one's gonna put a dirty comment on there saying I'm playing with the numbers. $16,000 I'm investing in a rep. What I'm getting at is there an option, or do you see, or maybe you already know somebody? That's a lot of money per rep. Is there a way in this industry to say, hey, you know what? I'll pay you $8,000 a month salary to go generate half of that cost. I'd pay you in salary, plus obviously some kind of small commission. I think that carrot's got to be there to go generate, like we see in the in the real estate industry or some other industry where you have to originate your own business. Is that model ever going to exist, you think, or do you know anybody that's doing it?
Yeah, there are some people that do it. I have a good friend named Mark Lavoie, Advanced Window and Bath up in Connecticut, and they incentivize the reps to self-generate. I think the real key, is education. You have to equip and empower the rep if you're going to ask them to do that. You can't just demand it. You need to give them a playbook. You need to give them some tools. Whether it's social media, giving them some instruction on how to consistently post and get leads from their family and friends and their overall network, or whether it's knocking on doors or working a home show, visiting BNI groups. You don't just show up. You have to show up, with a seed. If you're gonna grow some fruit from those initiatives. Yeah.
Well, you kind of just answered my other question, which was going to be, let's say it's, just in general of, hey, we want to implement a better self-generation, what are some simple, you named a bunch, so maybe you almost just rename them if you want, but what are some simple ways that a sales rep could, obviously run the company issued leads, but naturally fill in gaps or build out self-generated funnel for themselves? What are some of the best ways?
Yeah, so I think starting with social media, just because it's so quick, right? It's so easy to post every day and just let people know what you do. And so that would be the first place I would start. But you want to have consistency. It requires repetition. You can't just post and pray and that someone's going to, once a month, they're going to remember that you're in the home remodeling business and that you're their go-to source for, windows or bathrooms or roofing or whatever it is. You got to be consistent. And so, you can get into those community pages. And, if you're going to visit your customers, and that's a huge one. Just going back to your installs. And while you're there, taking good pictures, taking video with your customers, getting testimonials, those are great ways to kind of get 2 times out of your effort, right? Don't just go there and say thank you and inspect the install. get some content, document what you're doing and turn that into content to be able to generate some leads.
Speaking, do you think it, maybe your friend there that you mentioned, I don't know him, but should it be a requirement, like a KPI? Not a requirement. I don't like to say that, but do you know what I mean? Do you, hey, it's, I don't know, 10% of your total leads come from self or total sales in a year. Maybe, I don't know what the number is.
Yeah, I think it needs to be reasonable, because if you're demanding too much, look, the competition in the home improvement space, there are plenty of companies around you where your reps are going to say, hey, I can go across the street and I don't have to do any of this stuff. So I think it's being fair and reasonable about the expectation is important. Because if you demand too much, let's say that there's other places that'll make the leads for me and I can stay focused. The challenge has always been, as someone who has both skills, I've generated a lot of leads knocking on doors, and I've been in the home quite a bit over the years. And it's tough to go two directions at the exact same time. That's the issue. If you're out generating leads, and let's say you got a hot one and they're willing to sit with you right now, now your lead generation stops, right? Yeah. So, you got to go inside and you got to spend a couple hours with them. And even if that turns out to be a great, conclusion, and you earn their business, you're no longer generating leads for the day. And tomorrow you're back at square one, right? So, having it as supplemental, I think, is fantastic, but having it as the only way that a rep generates business is not as sustainable as you might think.
So you mentioned earlier, kind of made a name for yourself in the door-to-door canvassing, that kind of your specialty, if you will, probably still is, obviously. And, for years it was probably starting to become perceived as old school. Now it's probably, you see it slowly being talked about more and more. And obviously you're a huge advocate for it, rightfully so. Where do you think it goes and gets misunderstood from sales reps? Or what is most misunderstood, I would say?
Well, let me comment first on how the popularity of canvassing comes and goes, right? It's right in line with the economy, right? And when the fish are jumping in the boat, nobody wants to knock on doors and do the difficult work. And when the economy tightens up and the lead flow is restricted, then all of a sudden canvassing is the flavor of the week, right? I mean, we had a hearty laugh with a group of us the other day where we said canvassing is the new canvassing.
Right.
It's never changed. It's never changed, but it becomes really popular at certain times in certain market conditions. But I think there's a way to do it where it's really conversational and hopefully more relational and less transactional, where you can knock on someone's door in really close proximity to one of your job sites. And when you're close to a job site, you've got that point of reference, you've got that trust. And so just work a nice tight radius around your job site, break the ice with the homeowner, apologize for any disruption while you're working in the neighborhood. And, one thing that's a big misconception is there's a lot of people who attack. I noticed you have the old, shingles, the old windows, the old peeling paint, and when you go on the attack, you actually raise the guard of the consumer. Our goal when a stranger's knocking on the front door is to disarm them, right? Before you can charm them, you must first disarm them. And so the way to go about doing that is not through attacking them. It's actually the opposite. It's through complimenting them. I can see you take great pride in your home. It looks like you've got brand new, windows. You certainly don't need those. Let me ask you, someone who takes pride like you do, what do you think would be next on the home when you're finally ready? And that disarming language, when you're finally ready.
What about when the sales rep gets there? Any obviously a lead is a lead, right? The mentality in terms of, but is there an area of focus that you would say in your experience that's more important on a, we'll just say nebulous lead, canvas lead, compared to some of the other sources, maybe inbound, that we see?
Yes, definitely. When an inbound source, consumers typically have had the conversation. John and Mary, homeowner, have said, it's time for us to start looking into this. let's make some calls. Let's get on the web and find a contractor or two that we'd like to invite into our home to investigate this and quote it out, estimate it. When someone knocks on your door, and again, you might set the appointment for tonight or tomorrow or the next day, there's a chance that John and Mary haven't had that discussion yet. They haven't, really had a chance to say, hey, we're ready for this. We need to look into this, and they're kind of caught off guard. You've maybe had a lengthy conversation with one of the two spouses, but maybe not the other person in the home that is a relevant party to the conversation. And so you're going to hear things that are off-putting as a salesperson. You're going to hear things like, well, we haven't really been thinking about it. You were in the neighborhood and you said you had a special going on, so we just agreed to let the person over since you were nearby. And you're going to hear things that kind of don't sound very similar to some of those inbound leads where we joke where the coffee is brewing and the checkbook is, if the price is right and you don't do anything to screw it up, you've probably got the job.
Yeah.
There's a little bit more work involved in these nebulous leads. You have to, again, disarm them. If they tell you that, you're the first person we've had out, or, just looking into this, no problem. I'm just here to give you some information, answer your questions, leave you with a price, and continue to disarm them. And you have to do that inspection. That's really important with a nebulous lead, because they don't realize the problem is as bad as it is. Otherwise, they would have called you. So finding mold, mildew, rotten wood, problems and bringing those to the forefront is very important on a nebulous lead.
Have you always canvassed have you done it with every product out there, or for the most part, or is it better with others?
I've definitely gone door to door for roofing, siding, windows, doors, kitchens, baths, HVAC. We've helped some companies in pest control, solar. So quite a few different industries, product categories, and the principles are all the same. It's really following a process of disarming them at the front door. We have what we call a public service announcement that, we're just here to apologize for any disruption we may have caused with our trucks and trailers and work going on. And that usually piques curiosity to a high level, especially if you're wearing the right wardrobe, that bright yellow construction vest and a big lanyard ID badge. You can really pique curiosity there. And then, we kind of transition from that point into focusing on them and their home. That's a real key point, is to go from the focus being on you to quickly pivoting and transitioning to the focus being on them. When, no one wants to keep the door open if it's all about you, but they're happy to talk about themselves all day long.
It was probably a year ago, and I don't think I asked you about this the first time. I think I asked about you. I asked this question in private, and I don't know if you even remember it. I'm sure you do, because you're probably using it. I want to say it's a laminate. It may not be, but you had posted about in the close. You show the customer kind of like, I guess, a couple different options to buy, but then you guys reword the incentive for today a lot different, or let me present it a lot different. Are you familiar with what? Again, I think I went back and asked you about it. I was like on a message going, "Hey, what's this all about?" And you were like, "Oh,
yes.
It was just." I can't remember what the document said.
So we have a double-sided piece of collateral that we take with us when we're at the front door, and we have that with us and keep it close by at home shows and also in retail stores. And one side of it has the different products that are in our mix, whatever it is within our offering. If we sell windows and baths, then we only have pictures of various windows and baths, right? If we sell roofing, siding, and doors, then we have those pictures on one side. And that's what we use for product isolation. We want to get people to choose their top priority. Again, we don't want to make it our choice, because you never know. We may think, wow, these people really need to side their house. The paint is peeling, but they may be 10 times more concerned with the bathroom. So we allow them to direct the conversation. We're controlling it, right? We're asking the right questions, and questions are the answers. We're asking things like, if I was to leave you a brochure behind on one of these projects, which project would it be? So we're
Ah,
asking that question, and they're choosing, right? We call this pull, not push, right? We're pulling them into the conversation with us, and we're not pushing them into what we feel is most important. We also have another question. If you want it for free in one of those home makeover contests, which project would you choose? And again, that's a way of product isolation or project isolation, and pulling through that process. The backside of that laminate is our close, and that's where we kind of share the value of the visit. That we are willing to stop out,
that's it.
and while we're there, we will, we'll measure and inspect. We will help you select, products, colors, styles that are right for your home. We can even show you on an iPad what, your completed bathroom remodel would look like. And then lastly, we'll leave you with a down to the penny price that's good for a year, or good for 30 days, whatever your process may be. But, really flipping that laminate from, originally the product selection to then going into the close. But again, there's one really magical step that's in between that transition from one to the other, and that's eliciting pain, right? So if someone says, Joe, if I've got a laminate and I put it in front of you right now, and I have a few different products on there, and I say, Joe, if I was to leave behind a brochure for you on one of these projects, which one would it be?
Bath.
Really, the bath. Out of all the things on that list, what made you pick the bath? What's going
Ours
on in the
is
bath?
just dingy. We've wanted to replace it since we bought the home. Just haven't
Is
done it.
that right? Now, when you say dingy, what exactly do you mean?
Well, it's actually a guest bathroom or hallway bathroom, and that's what everybody that visits, family, in-laws, friends, they use it. And it's just a little embarrassing. It's moldy, you know, doesn't get any natural light, so it's already kind of gloomy just in general. But then you add in the mold and the mildew, and I can't. No matter how hard I scrub it, it just doesn't go away. It's just nasty.
And how long ago did you move in? You said it's been like that since you got here, huh?
Just it'll be 5 years here in
Wow.
I believe in April. Yeah.
And have you tried anything to remedy it? And you said nothing's really working for you?
No, no, no. I don't have a cleaner. It'll do it initially, but it just comes back. It seems like it comes back with a vengeance shortly after it gets used a few times. So
Can I make a suggestion, Joe?
please.
Let me share with you what we're doing for folks that live here in the neighborhood. We're offering a free measure and inspection. Take a look at that mold and mildew, see what the problem really is. And if for some reason, we can't help you with it, we'll direct you to someone who can. And we also have a free plan and design service where we can show you exactly what your new bathroom would look like, with all of that replaced. And then, finally, we leave you a down to the penny price. It's good for 30 days or good for a year. And my name's Tony, by the way, and stick out my hand for a shake, right? But that eliciting pain and letting you do all the talking and letting you, share with me what you don't like about your existing bathroom, is really something that totally gets missed, because once we find that little spark that I'm not happy with my bathroom, we tend to pounce. Okay.
Yeah.
And when we pounce, it's like commission breath. They just feel, whoa, 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 whoa. All I said is that one day I might remodel my bathroom, right? You can't pounce at that point. You have to, take the slow roll and pull out more pain from them. You take that spark and you fan it into a roaring flame before you then ask for the appointment. It's just like, dating and courtship, right? You don't say, let's skip dinner and ice cream and just go straight back to your place, right?
You
No, it's
don't? That doesn't work. No, I'm just kidding.
not going to have any success that way.
Yeah.
So,
It's
it's really just more of a courtship in that, need uncovering and eliciting pain and really solidifying that this is a priority in their mind. Then you transition to the solution.
So everything you just talked about is more like you're for say setting a lead, but isn't it the same darn thing that we're supposed to be doing in the home? Like,
It,
aren't
it
we kind of
really is.
shouldn't we be aligned with whatever you're doing at a show, that we make sure we cover that value of the visit again, and like that, all that, they should hear that a couple times. I'm not,
That's
I'm,
exactly right. Everything should be reinforced, throughout your process. It should be a thread that's woven from the point of lead generation all the way through to the close of the sale and then beyond in your customer care and trying to get back in and do another project for these folks. But, your offer, your special offer at the present time, if it's, half off labor or whatever, that should be mentioned at the point of lead generation and carried into the sales process. It should really be a seamless scenario.
the other thing was, I'm glad you covered that. I found the other, if you couldn't tell, I was looking for it. Sorry. Um, it was and again, it's your company. So that's the other thing that's really cool is, everything that you probably suggest to your consulting clients, I'm assuming you probably do or have done in your own business, which is unique to me. I think it's awesome, actually. But you posted about it, and I highly recommend, go befriend, I guess is the word, Tony's on his Facebook page, because he shares everything. But this was a while back, the cooperative savings plan, where
Yeah,
you're literally showing that, like, versus not having it documented. I just think it's really strong how you document your incentives.
yeah, we love that plan. It's a way to get the customer involved, right? And personally, I struggle with some of the discounts that we offer in our industry. They just, some of them don't seem to make sense. They make dollars. They
Yeah,
make the phone ring, but they don't
yeah.
make sense. And so I try to steer clear of them. And even though it's requires you to get a little more creative sometimes, we try to go with discounts that get the customer involved, get them to earn it. They've got to put a big ugly jumbo yard sign out front. They've got to help us with direct mail campaign around their job site. Let us use their home as a focal point in the neighborhood for radius marketing, different things like that. And when they give us permission and help us with our marketing, we can justify offering them some savings, because that's the only variable cost in our business, right? You can't change the products if you're using good products. The cost is what the cost is. If you're using good labor, your own in-house or factory trained certified labor, you're not subcontracting it out to transient labor. That does, you can't chisel down the cost there. It is what it is, right? Your
Yeah.
overhead, your rent, your utilities, all that kind of stuff, your insurances, those don't budge, right? So the only thing that a lot of times in a business that is variable is their advertising or marketing costs. And if the homeowners are willing to partner with you and get you more visibility and help grow your business, then you can justify some savings for them in return.
Do you have, knowing you, I'm just saying, do you have any data, like, to the, not to the success on converting that particular customer, but because you get those 4 different things from them? I'm saying 4 based on what I've seen on it. Are you seeing an ROI, like, from
Oh,
referrals from that big
yeah.
goofy
So
yard sign?
yeah, we get a ton of business out of the jumbo yard sign. That's been a real win for us. And, obviously it really aids the canvassing efforts and direct mail efforts. Our entire marketing is centered around, collecting and following through on the cooperative savings plan. Those are the affordable leads, that afford us the luxury of experimenting with other more expensive lead sources.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's where the costs aren't going down. Obviously, we're gonna talk about that in a minute, because I'm sure that's going to be covered, this year at the Lead Gen Expo. I want to talk, if you don't mind. I think it's something you told me. I think it's critical that not a lot of sales reps truly understand. I know I sure didn't when I started, at least, but sometimes I don't even know if I understand it today with all the things that are going on. But you know what it takes to get a lead issued, to get that rep to that door. What not money, what legwork.
Yeah.
Can you kind of give your perspective? And that's what's so cool about you. You have all facets of the business, and you're not just owner level, you're in the mix. Can you give a majority of our listeners and people that will watch this later? I think it's super helpful to understand what goes into, again, getting them to that door.
Yeah, I think it's really important for salespeople to understand, what goes into making a lead and we start with the basic criteria. We have four. The prospect owns the home. There's a want/need. Sometimes they remodel a bathroom because they want it. Sometimes they remodel it because they need it, right? And so all relevant parties are present. That's a key. Relevant parties. We do not like to use the term decision makers. That's a trigger word that scares a lot of people right out of your funnel. And then lastly, there's sufficient time to do inspection, selection, and price presentation. There's got to be enough time for all that. So it starts with those four criteria, and we profess that over and over again. We reward people for being able to recite that, and that's anyone in our company. Because if you work in the warehouse, if you work in administration, if you're going to supply a lead to us, a referral even, we want you to understand that this is what the requirements are, okay? And there's going to be fallout, right? The more nebulous the lead, if you knocked on their door and they weren't expecting you, if it's a sweepstakes where they were just hoping to win for free, those are nebulous lead sources. And you're going to have to qualify them. So you might start out with 100 and you may only have 40 after you put that criteria in place. And once you send it through the filter, the next batch is handing it to a salesperson. And even a percentage of those, when you get to the front door, one spouse might not be present. You may not have enough time for inspection, selection, and price presentation. So there's fallout throughout the process. But everybody works cohesively to meet those criteria of that the prospect owns the home, that there's a need and a want, and all relevant parties are present, and that there's sufficient time to get that demo off. It's got to be an aligned effort across the board.
Is that number, a couple questions on this, is that number, I did the math because it was easy, but is it 40%? Is that a good?
So on a canvassing lead, we would shoot for 55 or 60.
Okay.
If you're verifying that lead immediately while they're at the front door, because when you do that kind of thing, your conversions go up. If you try to get a hold of that person after the canvasser's left the doorstep, it gets tough. They just not always converting at the same level. There's a commitment level when they're converting right away. When they're verifying or confirming right away.
Let's say hypothetical. It's I don't know what the source would be, but it's, I don't know, within 3 days from the time they called to when you run it. How many times, or how many different times are quote unquote qualifying them to those four things? Is there different levels, or is it once and done? Is it?
Yeah, so at our company, there's an immediate verification that happens while the marketer is with the homeowner at the retail store, at the front door. And then if the appointment is set, 48 hours or 72 hours away, then they will be touched again to make sure, run down those qualifications again, making sure that the time is good, that we kind of fish for time constraints to make sure that there's nothing on the back end of that appointment that might interfere. We ask questions like, in the off chance we had a full schedule, on the off chance we happen to be running behind, get caught in traffic, or stuck at another appointment. Is there anything we need to be mindful of, that any plans that you have, for the better part of the afternoon or the remainder of the evening, and kind of fish for those time constraints to see, well, yeah, we have a hard stop at 7 o'clock, or yeah, we got a dance recital at 6:45 that we need to get to, little league game, whatever it might be. We're fishing for those to try to increase the conversion.
Have you played much with time your ask, what your ask is for around that? It's come up quite a bit in some different conversations I've had. I'm curious, you'd be the one to know. Obviously, I guess it depends on product that you're presenting,
Yeah.
but is there a number that you've had more success with windows and bath?
Yeah, 60 to 90 minutes, whether we need it or not. We ask you to set that aside. It's one of those things where we're going to do all this. The key is we're going to do all of this for you, totally free. We're going to do the measure and inspection, the plan and design service, the down to the penny price quote. We're going to do all of this for you, totally free. The only thing we ask in return is that you set aside 60 to 90 minutes, whether we need it or not. That kind of phraseology. I still think it's helpful, in a secondary call, if you need to contact again and things, to fish for those time constraints, by asking simple questions that can uncover anything that might be on the back end of the appointment.
Yeah, I'm just curious if it's, I guess, do you ever change any of your, qualification process if leads are light, if leads are, or do you try to qualify to a standard regardless?
There have been times. That's a great question. I think that, there's an old saying that applies to a number of things, playing chess and playing checkers, right? I think that this falls right into that category. I think sometimes you have to play chess, right? It may be December and there's seasonality and there's, some appointments on the schedule and they're just not picking up. Why not go see them? I'd much rather have my rep on his way to an appointment or her way to an appointment, to go see somebody, and maybe something comes of it, than having them sitting around, having parking lot meetings about the fact that there's no leads.
Right.
And you can't get lucky unless you're active, right? I mean, we had, I just talked to someone recently that went out, to get a yard sign, collect it from a homeowner that had it. And, during that conversation, they went inside and a conversation arose about another project, and that doesn't happen unless you're active, unless you're nose to nose, toes to toes with people.
Yeah, do you require that your reps go back at all?
No,
or?
we don't require it, but as a company, we go back. Either the rep goes back with a gift basket, or a brand ambassador goes back and they take a satisfaction survey. They take some after pictures. We give that gift basket that has a rewards card in it with potential for savings on a future project, so there's a lot involved in that. We activate the warranty at that time. That really helps us get into every one of those, or almost every one of those. Create a little more urgency for that visit. We do a final walkthrough before we activate the warranty.
That's actually not a bad way to do it. Obviously, you have Lead Gen Expo coming up. I say coming up, it's June. Am I right?
Yeah.
June.
Yep.
So
June
it'll be here
10th.
before we know it. Something that you're pretty known for in the industry is getting creative. Obviously, you've done things like the 24-hour showroom, which I think you've said has been a success all in all.
Yes, it has been a success. I mean, I think people are looking for, earth-shattering numbers. It's not necessarily big dollars, but it pays for itself without question. We are opening our third 24-hour showroom on May 1st, first week of May, and we intend to have 5 before the end of the year.
So wait, it's got to do okay. If you're doing your third, you wouldn't. I didn't know that. I thought you only had the one. Oh wow. What's the craziest you've seen so far in terms of somebody coming in?
You know, we haven't had anyone come in after 11 p.m. But you know, some of the surprises, Joe, most of the surprises have been positive, really positive. They are a customer that has an appointment in the future and they want to come look at things before the rep comes over, which we love. And you know, we've had people who we say, you know, calls that we went on and we missed, and we thought it was dead, and we find out it's still alive because they've come into the 24-hour showroom. We've had people who purchased and had, you know, reservations and wanted to double check their selections and things like that. So that helped keep it in bed. So it really facilitates sales overall, and some things like that that were positives. That it wasn't just about, you know, my mind was, let's make some leads. You know, this will help get more people through the doors and make leads. But we found out there were some other, you know, aspects of having the showroom that really helped keep it make sense.
Is it occupied during the day by anybody?
So one of our showrooms, just because we had our business was there located in that showroom for so
Oh,
long, you know, we that one is occupied during the day, but the others, we have, you know, the one we have down in Canton, Ohio, we've only had a cleaning person in there since it opened in November.
that's wild. So what high level, I don't want to give it away. What's the you know, what magic silver bullet are you going to teach everybody to in the lead game come June? That's just going to be the answer to all their lead gen problems.
You know, this year we've got a couple new focuses. One, we brought in Marcus Sheridan, who's incredible. He wrote the book They Ask You Answer, another book called Endless Customers. And this guy's an absolute wizard as it relates to, you know, consumer search. So, you know, there's a lot of new things happening with Chat GPT and Grok and all these other AI engines. And I am not an expert in those areas. So I know when it's time to call somebody else and get them in. And I'm just grateful to have Marcus involved there. Um, we talked, what I'm really excited about is, you know, I've been talking to Brian Gottlieb, your old friend, and
Yep.
about, you know, really training the managers and having how to have good one-on-one, you know, management meetings and personal development meetings with your team. And, you know, that is something that is just, we don't spend enough time on. You know, we promote people to management positions because they're good at their job, they're good at sales, or they're good at marketing, generating leads, but they haven't proven to us that they're great at managing people yet. And we often don't give them the tools, the skills to empower them to do really well at that. And I think, you know, Brian's great in that area. So I'm excited to have him talk about that. So there's going to be a lot of value for sure.
You're bringing up a very subject close to home, something I'm, you know, passionate about and focused on. It's two different skill sets at the end of the day,
Yes.
right? No matter what, whether it's sales, whether it's call center, whether it's canvas leader, not, it's, you know, first and foremost winning through other people versus being a, you know, sole contributor.
Right.
And showing people, you know, I think the biggest challenge, and correct me if I'm wrong, is, or I found for my own self, is I can't teach people to do what I did. You have to be able to teach and coach. You know, there's a reason MJ's never was a coach, and he didn't do so well owning the Hornets either. You know,
Right.
I'm sure it's frustration at that level when you're such a high performer potentially, which tends to be who, like you said, who we promote. What?
That's that's
Go
That's
ahead.
something
Go ahead.
else that you just struck a chord there, Joe. I mean, we're going to talk about, you know, communication styles, and it relates to these meetings with one-on-ones. But, you know, Marcus Sheridan is a great communicator, and you know, he talks about four communication styles. You know, one, the dictator. A lot of times we can be a dictator as a business owner or a manager. You know, we can you know, we can be an instructor and really just lay out the path for people and do this, do this, do this, and you'll be fine. We can be an attorney and we can really lead people and say, hey, you know, wouldn't it make sense to do this? And don't you think it'd be a great idea if we did that? And you really stifle people's growth, you know, in that way. When you're a pathfinder and you get people to find their own path by asking them questions, and it's the exact same principle of, you know, what we talked about earlier, pulling versus
Yeah.
pushing. We don't want to push our people. You know, we don't want to push our customers, and we don't want to push our team. We want to pull.
There's, which talk about striking a chord. I think there's more aligned with sales leaders, I'll say sales, but and being a salesperson, like in terms of that influence, they're both defined the same way if you truly are doing it right.
Yes.
But you hear a lot of people bring up the conversation that, top reps don't make it on the sales side. I don't know, maybe on the others, but top performers don't make great managers. And I don't agree with it. I mean, yes, historically it can be that way, but it's also because we're not training them. We're not setting proper expectations for the role. We're just trying to get the role filled. I think there's a lot of reasons that it happens that could be, it sounds like you're going to probably address a bunch of them, which is awesome. From the lead gen side, what's going on in 2026? That's anything different? Or are you going back to basics? What do you see in your own business?
It's actually both. It's like I said, some stuff's changing in AI, and we've done some stuff based on what we've learned from Marcus, to feed AI engines and to help come up higher in those rankings. And we're also getting back to basics, knocking on doors more, and getting into some retail stores. We're expanding our 24-hour showroom footprint. So we're attacking on all fronts.
You're sharing all that in Lead Gen Expo, right? You don't hide anything from what you do in your own business with everybody else, do you?
No, last year we got on a school bus. We had a 66 passenger school bus pull up in front of the hotel and take about 50 people to our retail store, one of our retail store showrooms, and watch them generate leads right from the back room. We have it kind of the showroom up front facing the retail store, and then a space in the back for training. And we had cocktails and hors d'oeuvres and let people see it in action. We hide nothing.
Before I let you go, on the consulting side of things, what are the biggest roadblocks that you see with your consulting clients?
Oh God, that's a great question. We get a lot of people that want to pay you money to train them, coach them, and when you tell them they're going to have to do things differently than they're doing now, they want to resist.
Yeah.
And that they have difficulty trusting the process, difficulty with change, and discomfort, difficulty with consistency in following a discipline, right? Those are the big challenges for us as coaches and trainers trying to get people to adopt a new way of doing business.
Yeah, I was going to ask, but you kind of just answered it. It's kind of those things that probably are making the companies that are great, is they do have the discipline. Yeah.
It's the disciplines all the way, starts with mindset, but then, the discipline is the daily, execution of the thing, right? Whether it's knocking on a door, going into a home, working a home show, that there's certain disciplines that you have to follow if you want to be successful, and you can't get loosey-goosey in those practices.
It's 0-0 in our world every day, that's for sure. Last but not least, if there's one thing, just one, that you could give a sales rep, one idea, one tip, one strategy, one whatever, that they could implement sooner than later, but could make an impact on their performance, what would you say?
Oh, think, serve, not sell. I mean, just train yourself, get in the habit of thinking, serve, not sell. Whatever you can do from even before you arrive, researching that appointment, of anything you can do to help elevate the circumstances of the people you're going to visit. If it's you arrive and you're picking up the newspaper or the Amazon package and bringing it in for them. I mean, just the entire time thinking serve, not sell. I think people pick up on that vibe, and it just really helps you get tuned in with solving their problems and achieving their outcomes instead of your own.
Now, I said one last question, but I got one more because I think it's important. Because you have your ear to the ground, are you optimistic so far? We're almost at the end of Q1 2026 compared to 2025. What are your thoughts going forward, looking forward?
Yeah. So look, I have noticed that the market has been more challenging. Ever since COVID, it's been we've noticed, it's gotten more and more difficult. Costs have gone up. I think, on the one side, I'm going to keep putting one foot in front of the other and moving towards growth, moving towards, our vision for the future. But I'm not so naive to notice, and we're have to hustle, we have to grind in order to fight through some of the peaks and valleys that are taking place.
One follow-up, sorry. Do you think that hustle and grind is any more than it used to be, say, 2019?
No, not necessarily. No, I think it's just you get out of the habit of it.
Yeah.
It's human nature when times are good to be. We all take things a little easier and so forth.
That makes sense. That's kind of my. You meet some people that have only been in the space, and they're questioning their beliefs around it, but they've only been in it since 2022 or post 2020, if you will. And I'm like, man, we're just back to, in my opinion, I just want to get yours. We're back to 2019 wasn't an easy year. It wasn't,
No, not at all.
normal adversity.
I think it's, having your eyes on the dials, the dashboard of, what daily metrics you need to be watching. I went to Greece last summer, spent 3 weeks there, and when I came back and got on the scale, I was like, whoa. I was not paying attention to the to the metrics, the important numbers. We measure what we treasure, and so I think the same thing is true in our business. If we have to really monitor those things and pay close attention to them, and if it gets harder, then we turn up the effort, we turn up the hustle.
Last but not least, TonyHoty.com, is that probably the best place for everybody to go and they can get more information for the expo?
Yeah.
Can you also do me a huge favor? Once we'll share this in through the in-home sales pro group, can you put a link in the bottom in a comment there?
Absolutely.
If that's
Be
okay.
happy to.
That way make sure we direct them to where we want. And that's, like you said, June. I know you told me and I forgot already. I apologize.
Yeah, June 10th and 11th in my hometown of Cleveland, Ohio.
In the middle of the summer, humidity, perfect.
Yeah.
Just
great.
kidding. I love it. Tony, I can't thank you enough, man, my friend, for your time. And obviously I recommend, and I don't think Tony minds, again, through Facebook, because that's where everything is. Just go and like his page or befriend it. The amount of info and content that you share, again, you got to open your mind sometimes to the creativity that you bring to it, which I love. But at the same time, it's also here's the fundamentals that work, and you've been doing it long enough. I think is the proof is in the pudding. But I can't thank you enough for joining and dropping some value to everybody that joined us today, or will watch it at some point. So I appreciate it, my friend.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate you having me. It's been great.
Awesome. Folks, we'll see you soon enough. I think we have another episode back to back tomorrow. So Tony, thanks again, and we'll see everybody out there again soon.
All right.